the woman who stepped off the dusty stagecoach in Cheyenne, Wyoming territory, on a scorching July afternoon in 1878, looked like she had never touched a fence post in her life. And ranch foreman Cole Brennan knew right away that hiring her was going to be the biggest mistake of his summer. Eleanor Hartford stood barely 5 feet tall in her worn traveling boots, her dark hair already escaping its pins despite the careful way she had obviously arranged it that morning. Her dress, though clean and pressed, showed signs of hard wear and careful mending, and her hands, when she extended one to shake his, were soft and small. Cole studied those hands with a frown that deepened the lines around his eyes. These were not the hands of someone who could string barbed wire or repair split rails under the blistering Wyoming sun. "Mr. Brennan." Eleanor's voice was steady, her gray eyes meeting his directly. "I am Eleanor Hartford. I answered your advertisement for fence work." Cole removed his hat and ran a hand through his dark hair, already regretting the decision to place that advertisement in the Omaha newspaper. He had expected men, drifters looking for summer work, not this slip of a woman who looked like a strong wind would knock her clean over. "Madam, I think there has been some misunderstanding. The work I advertised for is hard labor, fencing, mending miles of boundary lines on the Double B Ranch. I read the advertisement quite thoroughly, Mr. Brennan." Eleanor's chin lifted slightly. It specified fence mending, basic carpentry skills, and the ability to work independently in challenging conditions. I possess all of those qualifications. With all due respect, madam, have you ever actually mended a fence? "I have mended many things, Mr. Brennan. I am a fast learner, and I work harder than most men you will find." There was something in her voice, a thread of desperation wrapped in steel that made Cole look at her more carefully. Her dress was neat but old, the fabric thin from washing. The small carpet bag at her feet was scuffed and tied with twine where the handle had broken. This was a woman who needed work badly enough to travel alone across the territory to find it. Cole sighed, feeling the weight of what was probably foolishness settling on his shoulders. "The pay is $40 a month plus room and board. The work starts before dawn and ends after dusk. The fencing runs through rough country, and we have had trouble with cattle rustlers coming through the northern boundary. It is not safe, and it is not easy. I understand completely. You will be staying in the old foreman's cabin near the main house. It is small but weatherproof." Cole studied her face, looking for signs of doubt or fear. He saw only determination. "If you cannot keep up with the work, I will have to let you go. That is more than fair, Mr. Brennan." He picked up her carpet bag, noting how light it was, and gestured toward the wagon he had brought into town. "Call me Cole. If you are going to work for me, we might as well dispense with formalities." Eleanor fell into step beside him, her stride surprisingly quick for someone so small. "Then you must call me Eleanor." The ride out to the Double B Ranch took nearly 2 hours, following the dusty road that wound through the grasslands and up into the foothills. Cole used the time to explain the scope of the work. The ranch covered nearly 10,000 acres, and the fencing had been neglected for the better part of 2 years, since his father had died and left Cole to manage the operation alone. The winter had been brutal, taking down sections of fence, and the spring floods had washed out entire stretches of boundary markers. "Why did you let it go so long?" Eleanor asked, watching the landscape roll past. Cole kept his eyes on the road. "After my father passed, I had to manage the cattle operation, the horse breeding, the hay cultivation, and everything else he used to handle. The fencing kept getting pushed to the bottom of the list. By the time I realized how bad it had gotten, I did not have the manpower to fix it." "What about ranch hands?" "I have 3 men who work the cattle and horses. They are good at what they do, but none of them know fencing. I needed someone who could work independently, someone who understood the craft of it. He glanced at her. That is why I am skeptical, Eleanor. Fencing is not just hammering nails. It requires understanding tension, reading the land, knowing which materials will hold in different conditions. My father was a carpenter in Pennsylvania, Eleanor said quietly. He built everything from houses to bridges. I was his only child, and he taught me everything he knew. When he died 3 years ago, I tried to keep his business running, but no one in Philadelphia would hire a woman to do carpentry work. I have been taking whatever jobs I could find, but there is only so much mending and alteration work available. When I saw your advertisement, I knew it was exactly what I needed. Cole absorbed this information, feeling his skepticism soften slightly. What brought you all the way to Wyoming? The need to survive, Mr. Cole. She smiled faintly, and perhaps the hope that the West might be more interested in what a person can do rather than what they look like. The Double B ranch house came into view as they crested a rise, a sprawling 2-story structure built from local timber and stone. The barn and outbuildings spread behind it, and beyond them, the land rolled away in waves of grass and sage. Cole pointed to a small cabin set apart from the main house. That will be yours. It has a stove, a bed, and a table. Nothing fancy, but it is private. Eleanor nodded, her eyes taking in everything with an intensity that surprised him. She was cataloging details, he realized, the way his father used to do when assessing a new piece of land. When the wagon stopped in front of the cabin, she climbed down before Cole could offer assistance and stood looking at the structure with a critical eye. The roof needs repair on the south corner, she observed, and the door frame is settling. I can fix both. Cole carried her bag to the door. Tomorrow morning I will show you the fencing situation. We will start with the eastern boundary. It is the most damaged and the most critical. If you can handle that section, we will talk about continuing. I will not disappoint you, Cole. He left her to settle in and walked back to the main house, wondering what exactly he had gotten himself into. His 3 ranch hands, Tom, Miguel, and old Charlie, would have plenty to say about hiring a woman to do manual labor. Cole could already hear the ribbing he would take over supper. But there had been something in Eleanor's eyes, a quiet competence that reminded him of his father. Maybe she would surprise them all. Or maybe she would last one day before realizing she was in over her head. Cole spent the evening doing paperwork in his father's old study, now his own, though he still thought of it as belonging to the man who had built this ranch from nothing. The account books showed what he already knew. The ranch was profitable, but only just. They needed to expand the herd, but they could not do that until the fencing was secure. Everything hinged on solving this one problem, and Cole had been struggling with it for months. When dawn broke the next morning, Cole found Eleanor already awake and dressed in practical canvas trousers and a work shirt that must have belonged to her father. She had tied her dark hair back in a tight braid, and she stood waiting with a determined expression that made Cole hide a smile. "Ready?" he asked. "I have been ready since 5 o'clock." Cole saddled 2 horses and loaded a pack mule with tools and supplies. They rode east into the rising sun, following the fence line that marked the boundary between the Double B and the adjacent property. The damage was extensive. Posts had rotted and fallen. Wire had snapped and curled back on itself, and in some places, the fence had disappeared entirely, reclaimed by the grass and sage. Eleanor dismounted and walked along the broken fence, her hands running over the wood and wire, testing the remaining posts for stability. Cole watched her work with growing interest. She moved with purpose, examining the damage with a practiced eye, occasionally kneeling to check how posts had been set or how the wire had been attached. "This section was built quickly," she said finally. "The posts are too shallow, and the wire tension is inconsistent. It was never going to last more than a few seasons. My father put that section up during a dry year when the ground was too hard to dig properly," Cole admitted. Eleanor nodded. "We will need to reset the posts deeper and use a different wire attachment method. The way this is set up, all the tension pulls on single points. If one fails, the whole section collapses." She looked up at him. "Do you have cross-bracing materials in the barn? We will need them. And I will need to see what tools you have available." They spent the rest of the morning hauling materials from the ranch, and Cole found himself taking orders from Eleanor as naturally as if she had been running fence crews her whole life. She explained her approach in clear, practical terms. They would work in sections, completely rebuilding rather than patching, using cross-bracing to distribute tension and setting posts at varying depths depending on the soil conditions. By midday, they had begun the actual work, and Cole saw immediately that Eleanor had not exaggerated her abilities. She handled the post hole digger with efficient movements, reading the soil and adjusting her technique as needed. When they began setting posts, she demonstrated a keen understanding of plumb lines and proper spacing. Her hands might have been soft when she arrived, but they gripped the tools with confidence. "Your father taught you well," Cole observed as they worked. "He believed that understanding materials and structure was more important than brute strength," Eleanor replied, tamping soil around a newly set post. "He used to say that good carpentry was about working with the natural forces, not fighting against them." They worked through the afternoon, falling into a rhythm that surprised Cole with its easy efficiency. Eleanor did not complain about the heat or the physical demands of the labor. She simply worked, steady and focused, occasionally asking questions about the ranch or the land, but mostly concentrating on the task at hand. When the sun began its descent toward the western mountains, Cole called a halt. They had reset nearly 20 posts and strung new wire across 2 complete sections. It was more progress than Cole had expected, especially with someone new to the work. "You did well today," he said as they packed up the tools. Eleanor wiped sweat from her forehead, leaving a streak of dust across her face. "Thank you. I told you I would not disappoint you." "No, you did not." Cole studied her for a moment, this small woman who had proven herself more capable than most of the men he had hired over the years. "Same time tomorrow. I will be ready." They rode back to the ranch in comfortable silence, and Cole found himself watching Eleanor from the corner of his eye. She sat the horse well, moving with the animal's rhythm, and her eyes constantly scanned the landscape with that same intense focus she had brought to the fence work. There was something restful about her presence, Cole realized. She did not fill the silence with needless chatter, but neither was she standoffish. She simply existed alongside him, present and capable. Over the following weeks, they fell into a pattern. Each morning, Cole and Eleanor would ride out to whatever section of fence needed attention, and they would work until the heat or the fading light forced them to stop. The progress was steady and visible. The eastern boundary took shape, solid and well-built, and Cole found his anxiety about the ranch's security beginning to ease. But more than the fence was changing. Cole noticed it first in small ways. How he looked forward to the mornings, how he found himself explaining things about the ranch that he had never bothered to share with anyone else, how Eleanor's rare smiles seemed to brighten the dusty work sites. She had a quick mind and a sharp sense of humor that emerged in unexpected moments, usually when Cole was taking himself too seriously. "You are glowering at that wire like it personally offended you," Eleanor observed one afternoon when Cole was struggling with a particularly stubborn section. "This wire is the devil's own invention," Cole muttered. "It is just wire. It does not care about your feelings." Eleanor took the wire from his hands and demonstrated a different technique for handling the tension. "There. Sometimes you need to sweet-talk it instead of bullying it." Cole laughed, surprising himself. He could not remember the last time he had laughed while working. His father had been a stern man who believed that work was serious business, and Cole had absorbed that attitude without question. But Eleanor brought a lightness to the labor that made the days pass more quickly. As summer deepened, Cole began to notice other things about Eleanor. The way she tilted her head when she was thinking through a problem, the small calluses forming on her palms, the way she hummed quietly to herself when she thought he was not listening, the fierce concentration in her eyes when she was measuring and cutting materials. She was beautiful, Cole realized with a start, though not in any conventional way. Her beauty was in her competence, her determination, the way she moved through the world with quiet confidence. The realization unsettled him. Eleanor was an employee, someone he had hired to do a job. Getting tangled up emotionally with her would be foolish and unprofessional. Cole tried to maintain his distance, keeping their conversations focused on the work, but it became increasingly difficult. Eleanor had a way of asking questions that cut through his careful boundaries, getting him to talk about things he normally kept private. "Why did you not want to run the ranch?" she asked one day when they were working on the northern boundary. Cole looked up from the post he was setting. "What makes you think I did not want to? You talk about your father's plans and your father's vision, but you never mention your own. It seems like you are maintaining his legacy rather than building your own." The observation hit closer than Cole liked. "My father spent 30 years building this ranch. It seemed disrespectful to come in and change everything." "Or maybe you are afraid that your vision will not measure up to his," Cole frowned. "You do not know anything about it." "You are right," Eleanor said calmly, returning to her work. "I apologize. It was presumptuous." But her words stayed with Cole through the rest of the day and into the evening. She was not wrong. He had spent the 2 years since his father's death trying to do things exactly as his father would have done, afraid that any deviation would prove he was not worthy of the legacy he had inherited. But that approach had left him exhausted and isolated, carrying the weight of someone else's dreams instead of pursuing his own. The next morning, Cole found Eleanor waiting as usual, but he noticed she had dark circles under her eyes. "Did you sleep poorly?" he asked. "I owe you an apology," Eleanor said. "What I said yesterday was out of line. You have been nothing but fair to me, and I had no right to make assumptions about your choices." Cole shook his head. "You were not wrong, Eleanor. I have been living in my father's shadow, afraid to admit that I might want something different than what he built." "What do you want?" The question was simple, but Cole found himself unable to answer immediately. What did he want? He had been so focused on maintaining and surviving that he had not allowed himself to think about wanting. "I used to dream about breeding horses," he admitted finally. "My father was focused on cattle, but I always loved working with horses. I thought about developing a breeding program, focusing on quality stock for the cavalry and for working ranches." Eleanor smiled. "That sounds like a fine dream. It would require capital I do not have and expertise I would need to develop." "All dreams require investment, Cole. That does not make them impossible." They rode out to the northern boundary, and as they worked, Cole found himself talking more about his ideas for the ranch, the changes he would make if he were brave enough to step out from his father's shadow. Eleanor listened and asked thoughtful questions, never dismissing his ideas but helping him think through the practical challenges. It felt good to talk about these things with someone who understood both the work and the weight of expectation. By early August, they had completed the eastern and northern boundaries and had begun working on the western sections. The work had become easier as they developed their rhythm, and as Eleanor's skills continued to sharpen. Cole had stopped thinking of her as an employee and had begun to think of her as a partner, though he was careful not to say that aloud. One afternoon, as they were finishing up a particularly challenging section where the fence had to navigate rocky terrain, Eleanor sat back on her heels and surveyed their work with satisfaction. "We make a good team," she said. "We do," Cole agreed. Eleanor looked at him, her gray eyes serious. "Cole, I need to tell you something." The change in her tone made Cole set down his tools and give her his full attention. "What is it? When I came here, I thought this was just a job. A way to survive, to prove to myself that I could make my way in the world despite everything stacked against me." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "But working here, working with you, has become more than that. I find myself thinking about this place as home. And I find myself thinking about you more than is probably appropriate for an employee." Cole's heart began to beat faster. "Eleanor, let me finish, please. I know that I am just the woman you hired to mend fences. I know that I have no right to expect anything beyond the terms of our agreement, but I would be dishonest if I did not acknowledge what has been growing between us, at least on my side." Cole stood and walked to where Eleanor sat, dropping to one knee beside her so they were at eye level. "You are not just the woman I hired to mend fences, Eleanor. You have not been that for a long time." He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture more intimate than anything they had shared before. "You came here to mend my fences, but somehow you have been mending me instead. All these broken parts I did not even know needed fixing." Eleanor's breath caught. "Cole, I do not want to complicate your life." "You are not complicating it. You are making it make sense for the first time in 2 years." Cole took her hand, running his thumb across the calluses she had developed from their weeks of work together. "I think I started falling for you the day you told me I was glowering at the wire. You see me clearly, Eleanor. Not the shadow of my father, not the struggling ranch owner, just me. Do you have any idea how rare that is?" "I see you because you let me see you," Eleanor said softly. "You trusted me enough to show me who you really are." Cole leaned forward and kissed her, gentle and tentative, giving her every opportunity to pull away. But Eleanor leaned into the kiss, her hand coming up to rest against his chest, and Cole felt something tight in his chest loosen and expand. When they broke apart, Eleanor was smiling. "I have wanted to do that for weeks," she admitted. "Why did you not say something sooner?" "I was afraid you would send me away. I needed this job, Cole. I needed the money and the purpose and the proof that I could do something meaningful. I could not risk losing all of that." "You will never lose this," Cole promised. "Job or no job, you belong here, Eleanor. You belong with me if you want that. I want that more than I have wanted anything in a very long time." They finished the day's work with a new lightness between them, and when they rode back to the ranch, Cole reached over and took Eleanor's hand, their horses walking side by side. It felt natural and right, as though this was how things were always meant to be. That evening, Cole asked Eleanor to have dinner with him in the main house rather than eating alone in her cabin. He cooked steaks and potatoes, simple ranch fare, but Eleanor praised the meal as though it were a feast. They sat at the table long after the food was gone, talking about everything and nothing, learning the small details of each other's lives that build intimacy. "What was your mother like?" Eleanor asked. Cole smiled, though the expression was tinged with sadness. "She was gentle, the opposite of my father in every way. She loved books and music, and she used to read to me every night when I was young. She died when I was 12, and I think part of my father died with her. He threw himself into the ranch after that, and I tried to follow his example. I am sorry you lost her so young. What about your mother? She died giving birth to me, Eleanor said quietly. My father never remarried. He said she was the only woman he could ever love, and he would rather spend his life honoring her memory than searching for a replacement. I think that is why he invested so much in teaching me his trade. I was all he had, and he wanted to make sure I could survive in the world without him. He would be proud of what you have accomplished. I hope so. There are days when I wonder if I am doing what he would want or if I am just too stubborn to admit defeat. Cole reached across the table and took her hand. There is no shame in being stubborn, especially when you are fighting for something worth having. The summer rolled on, and Cole and Eleanor continued working on the fences during the day while growing closer in the evenings. Cole found himself sharing his dreams for the ranch more openly, and with Eleanor's encouragement, he began making plans to start a small horse breeding program the following spring. Eleanor helped him think through the logistics, applying her practical problem-solving skills to the new challenge. You will need separate pastures for the breeding stock, she observed one evening as they sat on the porch of the main house, watching the sun set over the mountains. And you will need better shelter than what you have now. The current barn is fine for working horses, but breeding stock requires more controlled conditions. That will require building, which means money I do not have right now. Then we start small. Build one good structure and prove the concept. Once you have horses to sell, you can reinvest the profits into expansion. Cole pulled Eleanor closer, marveling at how easily she had become part of his life and his planning. When did you become an expert on horse breeding? I am not an expert on anything except listening to what you need and helping you think it through. Eleanor leaned her head against his shoulder. Besides, I like the idea of building something new together. The fencing is almost done. I will need a new project. The mention of the fencing nearing completion brought a spike of anxiety to Cole's chest. Eleanor, when the fencing is done, what happens next? The job I hired you for will be finished. Eleanor lifted her head to look at him. Are you trying to ask me if I plan to leave? I suppose I am. Cole Brennan, you are going to have to try much harder than that to get rid of me. Eleanor's eyes were warm with affection and amusement. I am not going anywhere unless you want me to. This is my home now. You are my home. Relief flooded through Cole. I do not want you to go. I want you to stay here with me, permanently. Are you asking me to marry you? The question hung in the air between them, enormous and terrifying and absolutely right. Cole had not planned to propose, not tonight, not without a ring or a proper plan, but looking at Eleanor in the fading light, he could not imagine waiting another moment. Yes, he said firmly. Yes, I am asking you to marry me, Eleanor Hartford. I know we have only known each other a few months, and I know this is not the most romantic proposal, but I love you. I love your strength and your intelligence and the way you see possibilities where I see only problems. I love how you fit into my life as though there was always a space waiting for you. Marry me. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. Yes, yes, of course I will marry you. Cole kissed her then, deep and passionate, pouring all of his relief and joy and love into the kiss. When they broke apart, Eleanor was laughing and crying at the same time, and Cole felt happier than he could remember being in years. I do not have a ring, he admitted. I do not need a ring. I need you, and I need this life we are building together. That is more than enough. They spent the evening making plans, talking about a small wedding in town, about Eleanor moving into the main house, about the future they would build together. Cole felt as though a weight he had been carrying for years had finally lifted. He was no longer alone, no longer struggling to maintain someone else's vision. He had Eleanor, and together they could create something entirely their own. The next morning, they rode into town to speak with the minister and to make arrangements for the wedding. Cheyenne was bustling with activity, and Cole found himself proud to walk down the main street with Eleanor on his arm. They stopped at the general store to order supplies, and Cole noticed how Eleanor's eyes lingered on the bolts of fabric. "Pick something out," he said, "for a wedding dress." "Cole, I do not need a fancy dress. But you want one. I can see it in your eyes. Pick something out, Eleanor. Let me give you this." Eleanor selected a bolt of cream-colored cotton with small flowers embroidered along the edges. It was practical but pretty, exactly what Cole would have expected her to choose. They also ordered new clothes for Cole and discussed arrangements with the minister for a ceremony in 2 weeks' time. As they left the church, they ran into Tom, one of Cole's ranch hands who was in town picking up supplies. Tom's eyes widened when he saw Eleanor's hand tucked into Cole's arm. "Boss, is there something you want to tell me?" Tom asked with a grin. "Eleanor and I are getting married in 2 weeks, Cole announced. "You and the other men are invited, naturally." Tom let out a whoop and clapped Cole on the shoulder. "Well, it is about time. We were wondering how long it would take you to realize what was right in front of you." "Miguel owes me $5. I bet you would figure it out before September," Eleanor laughed. "You were betting on us, madam. We have been watching you two dance around each other all summer. It was only a matter of time." Tom tipped his hat. "Congratulations to you both. The boss here could use someone to keep him from working himself into an early grave." The news spread quickly, and by the time Cole and Eleanor returned to the ranch, Miguel and Charlie were waiting to offer their congratulations. The ranch hands had been skeptical when Cole first hired Eleanor, but her competence and work ethic had won them over quickly. Now they treated her with the same easy respect they showed Cole, and their genuine happiness at the engagement touched both Cole and Eleanor. The 2 weeks before the wedding passed in a blur of final fence work and wedding preparations. Eleanor worked on her dress in the evenings, her nimble fingers turning the simple fabric into something beautiful. Cole used the time to make improvements to the main house, fixing small things he had been neglecting, wanting everything to be perfect for Eleanor when she moved in permanently. They completed the final section of fence 3 days before the wedding, standing back to survey the full boundary of the Double B Ranch with satisfaction. The fence stretched across the landscape, solid and well-built, a testament to their summer of labor. "It is beautiful," Eleanor said softly. "It is functional," Cole corrected with a smile. "It can be both." Eleanor turned to face him. "Cole, when I came here, I thought I was just looking for work, but this summer has given me so much more than that. It has given me purpose and partnership and love. It has given me a place where I belong." "You have given me the same things," Cole replied, pulling her close. "You came to mend my fences, Eleanor, but you ended up mending my heart instead. You taught me that it is possible to honor the past while building something new. You taught me that I do not have to carry everything alone." They married on a bright September morning, with the ranch hands and a few townspeople in attendance. Eleanor wore her cream-colored dress, and Cole wore a new suit that felt stiff and uncomfortable, but was worth it for the way Eleanor's eyes lit up when she saw him. The ceremony was simple, conducted by the minister in the small church, but the vows they exchanged were profound. "I promise to stand beside you," Cole said, his voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. "To build a life with you that honors both of our dreams, to see you and value you for exactly who you are, to love you through all the seasons of our life together." Eleanor's voice was equally firm. "I promise to be your partner in all things, to bring my strength to complement yours, to challenge you when you need challenging and support you when you need support, to love you with all that I am, for all the days we are given." When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Cole kissed Eleanor with all the joy and promise of their new beginning. The small gathering applauded, and they walked out of the church into the warm autumn sunshine, ready to start their life together. The wedding celebration was held at the ranch, with tables set up in the yard and food contributed by neighbors and friends. Cole danced with Eleanor as Miguel played guitar, and he marveled at how completely his life had changed in just a few short months. The lonely, struggling ranch owner he had been was gone, replaced by a man who had found partnership and love and purpose. As evening fell and the guests began to depart, Cole and Eleanor stood together watching the sun set over the newly repaired fences. "What do you think happens next?" Eleanor asked. "We live," Cole said simply. "We run the ranch, we start the horse breeding program, we build the life we want together. We figure it out as we go." "That sounds perfect." They spent their first night as husband and wife in the main house, in the bedroom that had once belonged to Cole's parents and was now theirs. Cole was gentle and patient, and Eleanor was brave and trusting, and together they discovered the physical expression of the love they had been building all summer. Afterwards, lying in the darkness with Eleanor tucked against his side, Cole felt a completeness he had never known was possible. The autumn passed in a blur of activity. They worked together on ranch projects, with Eleanor taking over much of the maintenance and repair work that had previously consumed Cole's time. This freed Cole to focus on the cattle operation and to begin the initial planning for the horse breeding program. They worked well together, their skills complementing each other perfectly, and the ranch thrived under their joint management. In late October, Eleanor announced that she was pregnant. Cole was overjoyed, though also terrified. His own mother had died young, and the thought of anything happening to Eleanor filled him with cold dread. But Eleanor was practical about it, consulting with the doctor in town and taking care of herself while still maintaining her work on the ranch. "I am not fragile, Cole," she reminded him when he tried to stop her from climbing a ladder to repair the barn roof. "Pregnant women have been working since the beginning of time. I will be fine. I just worry. I know you do, but you need to trust me to know my own limits." Eleanor climbed down the ladder and took his hands. "I am strong and I am healthy and I am not going to break, but I need you to stop hovering over me like I am made of glass." Cole tried to back off, though it went against every protective instinct he had. He channeled his energy into preparing for the baby's arrival, converting one of the upstairs rooms into a nursery and building a cradle from oak wood. Eleanor helped with the design, and together they created a space that was warm and welcoming. Winter came early that year, with snow falling in November and temperatures dropping sharply. The ranch work became more challenging, but they had prepared well, and the fencing held strong against the wind and cold. Cole and Eleanor spent the long winter evenings by the fire, talking and reading and simply being together. These quiet moments became some of Cole's favorite memories. Eleanor knitting small clothes for the baby while he worked on account books, the two of them comfortable in shared silence. In early March 1879, Eleanor went into labor. Cole rode into town through a late winter storm to fetch the doctor, his heart pounding with fear. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Cole thought he might lose Eleanor the way his father had lost his mother. But Eleanor was strong, and when the baby finally arrived in the early hours of the morning, she was exhausted but alive and smiling. "It is a boy," the doctor announced, placing the tiny, squalling infant in Eleanor's arms. Cole looked down at his son, this impossibly small person who was somehow both him and Eleanor, and felt tears streaming down his face. "He is perfect." "He is," Eleanor agreed, her voice tired but full of love. "What should we name him?" "I was thinking Thomas, after your father," Cole suggested. "If that would honor his memory." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "That would be perfect." Thomas Brennan proved to be a healthy, loud baby who kept both his parents awake at night and exhausted during the day. But he also brought a joy to the ranch house that Cole had not known was missing. Watching Eleanor with their son, seeing her patience and tenderness, made Cole fall in love with her all over again. As spring arrived and the snow melted, Cole began implementing his plans for the horse breeding program. He purchased 2 quality mares and a stud from a breeder in Colorado, using money he had saved from the successful cattle sales. Eleanor helped him design and build a new barn specifically for the breeding stock, applying all of her carpentry knowledge to create a structure that was both functional and efficient. "You know, when I hired you to mend fences, I did not expect to also get an architect," Cole teased as they reviewed Eleanor's plans. "You get the full Eleanor Brennan package," she replied with a grin. "Fence mender, carpenter, wife, mother, and occasional architect. It is a bargain at $40 a month. I should probably give you a raise. You should probably stop talking and start building." They worked on the new barn through the spring and summer, with Eleanor taking breaks to nurse Thomas, and then returning to the construction site with the baby strapped to her back in a cradle board she had fashioned from canvas and wood. Cole's ranch hands helped with the heavier work, but the design and supervision came from Eleanor, and the finished structure showed her skill and attention to detail. By autumn, the new barn was complete, and Cole's small breeding program was underway. The first foal was born the following spring, a strong colt with good conformation and a gentle temperament. Cole sold him to a cavalry buyer for 3 times what he had expected, and suddenly, the horse breeding program was not just a dream but a viable part of the ranch's income. As Thomas grew from baby to toddler, the ranch continued to thrive. Cole and Eleanor made a formidable team, each bringing their strengths to the operation. Cole's knowledge of livestock and land management, combined with Eleanor's practical skills and problem-solving abilities, made the Double B one of the most successful ranches in the territory. In the summer of 1881, Eleanor announced that she was pregnant again. This time, Cole was less terrified and more excited, though he still hovered protectively until Eleanor threatened to make him sleep in the barn. Their second son, Henry, was born in February 1882, and their daughter, Grace, followed in 1884. The ranch house filled with the sounds of children, and Cole found himself busier than he had ever been, but also happier. He would sometimes stand in the doorway of the main room, watching Eleanor help Thomas with his letters while Henry played on the floor and Grace napped in her cradle, and marvel at how completely his life had changed. "What are you thinking about?" Eleanor asked one evening when she caught him watching her with that expression. "I am thinking about how you came here to mend fences, and instead you gave me everything I did not know I needed." Eleanor smiled and crossed the room to kiss him. "You gave me the same things, Cole. A home, a purpose, a family, a partnership. I came west looking for work and I found a whole life instead. Do you ever miss Pennsylvania, the city life?" "Never. This is where I belong, with you, with our children on this land. I could not imagine being anywhere else." The years passed, and the Double B Ranch grew into one of the premier horse breeding operations in Wyoming. Cole's breeding program gained a reputation for producing quality stock, and buyers came from across the territory and beyond to purchase his horses. The cattle operation remained profitable, and the ranch employed a dozen men full-time. Thomas, Henry, and Grace grew up working the ranch alongside their parents, learning the values of hard work and partnership that Cole and Eleanor modeled. Thomas showed particular aptitude for working with horses, while Henry inherited his mother's mechanical mind and skill with tools. Grace proved to be an excellent rider and developed a talent for training that surpassed even her father's abilities. In 1892, when Wyoming achieved statehood, Cole and Eleanor traveled to Cheyenne with their children to witness the celebration. Standing in the crowd, watching the ceremony, Eleanor leaned against Cole and said, "We have been part of building this, you know. Not just the state, but the spirit of it. We came here with nothing but determination and skills, and we built something lasting." "You built something lasting," Cole corrected. "You came to mend my fences and ended up building a whole life." "We built it together," Eleanor insisted. "That is the point. Neither of us could have done this alone, but together we created something stronger than either of us individually." Cole kissed the top of her head, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. They had been married for 14 years, and he loved her more now than he had on their wedding day. She had become not just his wife but his true partner, the person who understood him completely and challenged him to be better. As the years continued to pass, Cole and Eleanor watched their children grow into capable adults. Thomas married a rancher's daughter from the neighboring spread and began managing the horse breeding program, bringing new ideas and energy to the operation. Henry studied engineering and helped modernize the ranch operations, designing new systems for water management and barn construction. Grace, to everyone's surprise, became a veterinarian, one of the first women in the state to do so, and her expertise became invaluable to the ranch and the surrounding community. Cole and Eleanor gradually transitioned from managing the ranch to advising the next generation, trusting their children to carry on the legacy they had built. They spent more time traveling, visiting other ranches and horse breeding operations, always learning and growing together. In 1898, on their 20th wedding anniversary, Cole took Eleanor back to the eastern boundary where they had started working together 2 decades earlier. The fence was still standing, solid and well-maintained, a testament to the quality of their initial work. "You remember that first day?" Cole asked, his arm around Eleanor's waist. "I remember thinking you looked very skeptical of my abilities," Eleanor replied with a laugh. "I was skeptical. You proved me wrong within about 3 hours. I had to. I needed that job desperately." Eleanor leaned her head against his shoulder. "But it turned into so much more than a job. You gave me a place to belong, Cole. You gave me permission to be myself, fully and without apology." "You gave me the same gift," Cole said. "You taught me that love and partnership were possible, that I did not have to face everything alone." "You mended more than my fences, Eleanor. You mended my whole life." They stood together in the Wyoming sunshine, looking out over the land they had built together, and Cole felt a profound sense of gratitude. The lonely, struggling man who had placed that advertisement in the newspaper was gone, replaced by someone whole and happy and loved. Eleanor had come to mend his fences, but in the process, she had mended his heart, teaching him what it meant to truly share a life with another person. As the new century approached, Cole and Eleanor found themselves surrounded by grandchildren, the ranch bustling with the next generation of Brennans. Thomas and his wife had given them 3 grandchildren. Henry and his wife had 2, and Grace, who had married a fellow veterinarian, had just welcomed their first child. Cole and Eleanor built a smaller house on the ranch property, close enough to be involved but far enough to give the younger generation space to run things their own way. They spent their days working in the garden Eleanor had always wanted, reading together on the porch and enjoying the fruits of the life they had built. On quiet evenings, they would sometimes walk out to look at the fences, checking the work, talking about the past and the future. These walks became a kind of meditation, a way of honoring the journey they had taken together. "Do you have any regrets?" Eleanor asked one evening as they stood watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Cole considered the question seriously. "No," he said finally. "Not a single one. Every choice I made, every risk I took, led me to you and to this life. I would not change anything. Not even hiring that small woman who showed up claiming she could mend fences. Especially not that. That was the best decision I ever made." Cole turned to face Eleanor, taking both of her hands in his. "You came into my life at exactly the right moment, when I was lost and struggling and did not even know I needed help. You saw possibilities I could not see. You believed in me when I could not believe in myself. You loved me into becoming the man I was meant to be." Eleanor's eyes shimmered with tears. "You did the same for me, Cole. You gave me a chance when no one else would. You looked past what I seemed like and saw what I could do. You made me your equal partner in everything. You loved me without trying to change me. That is because you were perfect exactly as you were. No one is perfect, Cole Brennan, and you know it, but we were perfect for each other. We still are." They kissed as the sun set behind them. Two people who had found each other against all odds and built a life that exceeded their wildest dreams. The fence stretched away in both directions, solid and enduring, a monument to where their story had begun, and a reminder that sometimes the act of mending something broken can lead to creating something entirely new. As they walked back to their house, hand in hand, Cole thought about all the years they had shared and all the years still to come. He thought about how Eleanor had arrived on that dusty stagecoach with nothing but a small bag and enormous determination, and how she had transformed not just his ranch but his entire existence. She had come to mend his fences, but she had ended up mending his heart, and in doing so she had given him everything that truly mattered: love, partnership, family, purpose, and joy. The fences would eventually need mending again, as all things did, but the love they had built would endure forever, solid and unshakable, a legacy that would pass down through generations of Brennans yet to come. In the years that followed, Cole and Eleanor continued to thrive. They celebrated birthdays and anniversaries, welcomed more grandchildren, and watched the ranch prosper under their children's capable management. They took up new hobbies together, with Eleanor learning to paint and Cole trying his hand at writing, documenting the history of the ranch and the West they had helped build. When Cole turned 65 in 1903, the family threw a massive celebration, with people coming from across the state to honor the man who had built one of Wyoming's most successful ranches. But in his speech that evening, Cole gave all the credit to Eleanor. "I was a man going through the motions of living when I placed that advertisement for a fence mender," he said, looking at Eleanor with undisguised love. "I had no idea that I was actually asking for someone to come and put my whole life back together. Eleanor came to mend my fences, but she ended up mending my heart instead. Everything good in my life, everything worth having, came from the moment I decided to take a chance on that small, determined woman who claimed she could do the impossible. She proved me right in ways I never could have imagined." Eleanor stood and crossed to where Cole was standing, taking his hand. "We proved each other right," she corrected gently. "We took chances on each other, and we built something beautiful together. That is what love is supposed to be. Two people seeing the best in each other and working together to make that vision real." The celebration continued late into the night, with music and dancing and stories shared around tables laden with food. Cole danced with Eleanor under the stars, moving slowly to music played by one of their grandsons, and felt a contentment so deep it almost hurt. "What are you thinking?" Eleanor asked, her head resting against his chest. "I am thinking that I am the luckiest man who ever lived," Cole replied. "I am thinking that every fence post we set together, every wire we strung, every challenge we faced was worth it for this moment right here. Just this moment, all the moments, every single one we have shared and all the ones still to come." As they grew older, Cole and Eleanor's love deepened into something almost mythical among their family and community. They were the couple everyone pointed to as an example of what marriage could be at its best. A true partnership based on mutual respect, complementary strengths, and unwavering commitment. They faced challenges, as all couples do. There were years when the weather was harsh and the ranch struggled. There were illnesses and injuries and the inevitable losses that come with a long life. But they faced everything together, drawing strength from their bond, never allowing difficulties to drive them apart. In 1910, on their 32nd wedding anniversary, Eleanor surprised Cole with a gift, a painting she had created of the eastern boundary where they had first worked together. She had captured the fence stretching across the landscape, the mountains in the distance, and two figures working side by side under the Wyoming sun. "That is us," Cole said softly, studying the painting. "That is where it all began," Eleanor replied. "I wanted to capture it, to remember not just what we built but who we were when we started building it. Two people who had no idea what we were beginning, who just knew we worked well together." Cole hung the painting in a place of honor in their living room, where he could see it every day. It became a touchstone for him, a reminder of the foundation upon which they had built their life. As the years passed into the 1910s, Cole and Eleanor remained active and engaged, though they moved a bit slower and rested a bit more. They spent their days in comfortable routines, working in the garden, visiting with family, and enjoying the simple pleasure of each other's company. On a warm June evening in 1915, they sat on their porch watching the sunset, as they had done thousands of times before. Cole held Eleanor's hand, his thumb tracing the familiar lines of her palm, the calluses long since faded but the strength still present. "You remember when you told me I was glowering at the wire?" Cole asked suddenly. Eleanor laughed, the sound still bright and full even after all these years. "I remember. You looked so serious, like the wire had personally insulted you. I was trying to impress you with my competence. You impressed me more when you laughed. That was when I knew there was more to you than the stern ranch foreman. That was when I started falling in love with you, I think, when I realized you could make me laugh even when I was frustrated." Eleanor squeezed his hand. "We have had a good life, Cole Brennan." "The best life," Cole agreed. "Better than I ever dreamed possible." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the colors change in the sky, the land stretching away in all directions. The fences were still there, maintained by the next generation but built on the foundation that Cole and Eleanor had laid. The ranch was thriving, the family was strong, and the legacy they had created would endure long after they were gone. "Cole," Eleanor said softly, "thank you for taking a chance on me all those years ago. Thank you for seeing what I could be instead of what I looked like I should be." "Thank you for coming to mend my fences," Cole replied, "and for staying to mend my heart." They remained on the porch until the stars came out, two people who had found each other against all odds and built a love story worthy of the West itself. The fences stood strong in the darkness, a testament to their work, but the real monument to their love was all around them. In the thriving ranch, in the family they had raised, in the life they had built together from nothing but determination and hope. The years continued to pass, each one adding new layers to their story, new grandchildren and great-grandchildren, new challenges and triumphs. Cole and Eleanor remained partners through it all, their love a constant in a changing world. They had started with a simple transaction: a man who needed fences mended and a woman who needed work. But they had created something infinitely more valuable, a partnership that transformed two lonely individuals into a whole greater than the sum of their parts. In 1918, as the world emerged from a great war and began to change in ways that would have been unimaginable when Cole and Eleanor first met, they celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary surrounded by 4 generations of family. Cole stood to give a toast, his hand shaking slightly with age but his voice still strong. 40 years ago, I hired a fence mender and I got a life partner instead. I thought I was solving a problem with my boundary lines, but Eleanor solved a much bigger problem: the loneliness and purposelessness that had been consuming me since my father died. She came to mend my fences, but she ended up mending my heart instead, and that has made all the difference. To Eleanor, the love of my life, my partner in all things, the woman who turned a struggling ranch into a home and a broken man into someone whole, I love you more today than I did 40 years ago, and I will love you for all the days we have left. Eleanor stood and kissed him to the applause and cheers of their family. And I love you, Cole Brennan, today and always. We built something beautiful together, you and I, something that will last long after we are gone. As the celebration continued around them, Cole and Eleanor slipped away to walk once more to the eastern boundary. They moved slowly now, leaning on each other for support, but they made the journey they had made hundreds of times over the decades. Standing beside the fence in the twilight, they looked out over the land that had been the canvas for their life together. Every fence post, every wire, every acre represented a choice they had made, a challenge they had overcome, a dream they had pursued. But more than that, it represented the love they had cultivated, the partnership they had forged, the family they had created. No regrets? Eleanor asked, echoing the question she had posed years before. Not a single one, Cole replied, as he always did. They stood together as darkness fell. Two people who had found each other at exactly the right moment and built a love that would echo through generations. The fence stood strong beside them, a monument to where their story began, but the real legacy was in their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, in the values they had instilled, in the example they had set of what true partnership looked like. Eleanor had come to mend Cole's fences, but she had ended up mending his heart instead, and in doing so, she had given him a life beyond measure. They had worked side by side, building not just a ranch but a legacy of love and partnership that would endure long after the last fence post rotted and fell. And that, Cole thought as he held his wife close in the darkness, was the greatest success any person could hope for. To love and be loved, to work and create together, to build something lasting in a temporary world. The stars came out above them, the same stars that had witnessed their first kiss, their wedding, the births of their children, and every milestone in between. Cole and Eleanor Brennan stood together under those stars, grateful for the journey that had brought them here and content with the knowledge that their love story, which had begun with a simple advertisement for a fence mender, had become something legendary. A testament to the power of partnership, the strength of love, and the beauty of two people building a life together, one fence post at a time. As they walked slowly back to their home, supported by each other as they had been for 40 years, Cole reflected on the truth of their story. Eleanor had indeed come to mend his fences, but in the process of working side by side, learning each other's rhythms, building something lasting together, She had mended something far more important. She had mended his broken heart, had filled the empty spaces in his life, had given him purpose and joy and love beyond measure. And he had done the same for her, giving her a place to belong, a platform for her skills, and a love that honored everything she was. Their story was not complicated or dramatic in the way that some love stories are. There were no grand gestures or sweeping declarations, no rescue from danger or triumph over impossible odds. Instead, their love was built on something more fundamental: mutual respect, complementary strengths, shared work, and the daily choice to build a life together. It was a love story perfectly suited to the West, to the land that demanded hard work and resilience, to the time that valued practical partnership over romantic ideals. But within that simple framework, Cole and Eleanor had created something profound. They had proved that love is not just a feeling but a choice renewed daily, a commitment to see and value another person completely, a willingness to work together toward shared goals. They had shown that the strongest partnerships are built on equality, on recognizing that different strengths can combine to create something more powerful than either person alone. As they entered their home, surrounded by photos of their family and mementos of their life together, Cole pulled Eleanor close one more time. "I meant what I said earlier. You came to mend my fences, but you ended up mending my heart instead. That is the truest thing I have ever known." Eleanor looked up at him, her gray eyes still clear and bright despite the years. "And you gave me a home, Cole, not just a place to live, but a true home. A place where I belonged, where I was valued for what I could contribute, where I was loved for who I was. You gave me the greatest gift anyone can give, the freedom to be fully myself." They settled into their evening routine, moving through the small house with the ease of long practice. These quiet moments, mundane and ordinary, were the foundation of their love, the countless small interactions that added up to a lifetime of partnership. That night, lying in bed with Eleanor's head resting on his shoulder, Cole thought about all the years they had shared and felt a deep satisfaction. They had built something lasting, something valuable, something that would continue long after they were gone. Their children were carrying on the ranch traditions. Their grandchildren were learning the values of hard work and partnership. And their great-grandchildren were growing up in a family that understood the importance of love and commitment. The fences still stood, maintained and repaired over the years, a physical reminder of where it all began. But the real monument to Cole and Eleanor's love was not made of wood and wire. It was made of memories and values, of lessons taught and examples set, of a family that understood what it meant to work together and support each other through all of life's challenges. As Cole drifted off to sleep, content and grateful, his last thought was a simple one. Eleanor had come to mend his fences, but she had ended up mending his heart instead, and that had made all the difference. She had taken a lonely, struggling man and transformed him into someone whole and happy. She had taken a ranch that was barely surviving and helped turn it into a thriving legacy. She had taken a life that felt empty and filled it with love and purpose and joy. And he had done the same for her, giving her a place to belong, a purpose to pursue, and a love that celebrated everything she was. Together, they had created a love story as enduring as the land itself, as strong as the fences they had built, as beautiful as the sunsets they had watched together for 40 years. Their story would be told and retold in the family for generations to come. The tale of the woman who came to mend fences and ended up mending a heart instead, and the man who took a chance on someone unexpected and found the love of his life. It was a story perfectly suited to the West, to the spirit of possibility and partnership that defined the frontier. It was a story of hard work and determination, of practical choices leading to profound love, of two people who found each other at exactly the right moment and built something beautiful together. And in the end, that was what mattered most. Not the acres or the horses or the thriving ranch business, but the love they had cultivated, the partnership they had forged, the life they had built together. Eleanor had come to mend Cole's fences, but she had ended up mending his heart instead. And that simple truth was the foundation of everything good in both their lives. It was a truth that would echo through generations, a reminder that sometimes the best things in life come from taking a chance on someone unexpected, from looking beyond surface appearances to see true potential, from building a life together one fence post, one day, one choice at a time.